Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the On Point trailer. We'll be talking about some of this week's new releases, including Taylor Swift, The Black Beauty, and also The Mandalorian. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you can subscribe on the YouTube channel where we've got over 50,000 members. You can also find us on all the different podcast platforms. And there's a big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and also YouTube channel members. So big thank you to Sarah, Darren, Lauren, The Juice, and What's on Netflix, Joshua, Andrew, and Jeremy. Now, we're going to be very honest with you right now, where we just realized we've done the entire recording and I hadn't hit record. So we have done this all once already. So so the situations where we're going to do it again. We're going to obviously try and make it a little bit different from us point of views, but yeah, I thought I'm just going to be honest and say that's the first time I've done that one. I am double checking I've hit record because that was a bit thing, but nevertheless we're gonna record it again, but it might be a little bit shorter than the original version. So yes,
it's now 1 o'clock in the morning here. I might pass out before this is done.
So let's talk first off the On Point trailer. What did you think of it?
I was a little surprised to find that I did find it interesting. I know next to nothing about ballet, so anything they want to teach me about it is brand new material. And the angle that they are taking with it seems interesting. They're focusing on these individual journeys for some of these kids, so we get to see it through their lens.
Yeah, it was definitely, for me, I kind of watched it. It was very dramatic, the music building up to it, kind of building up to the thing, telling the stories of how important this all is. I'm going to be honest, I have no interest in this series. It's something that I wouldn't want to watch. It's something I wouldn't go out of my way to watch. But I am very much glad that it's there because people that are interested in this, I want it there. I want people to enjoy it. I want different kind of content because Disney Plus needs some variety, and I'm glad it's just not another documentary on, Mandalorian or Marvel or something like that. Just something completely different. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like pick of the litter, go off and do something different. 6 episodes, a nice short season to kind of jump into. It'll be available on the 18th. I thought the trailer did a good job. I can tell that there's not as much interest. This is one of those things with Disney of with fans of we want something original. You put something original out and everyone doesn't even slightly even move the needle. It's like, oh yeah, but here's a sequel to a 1970s movie and everyone gets excited. Yeah, this is a kind of thing of, it is very different than what we've seen before, but more of this is required.
Absolutely. And I think that the audience for this is going to be a bit younger. I think particularly younger girls, but also probably some boys as well, will be interested to see what goes into being a ballet dancer. Mm-hmm. And these are people who won't be commenting on Facebook, so we're not going to see their reaction. But I suspect that there are actually a number of kids out there who they probably didn't see the trailer, but when it pops onto Disney Plus, might be like, "Oh, this is ballet. Let's watch the ballet thing."
Yeah, I mean, there's. I think just in general, this is just something that's really interesting for people that are into ballet or want to get into ballet or just after something a bit different. And I'm fine with it. I think the fact of them dropping all 6 episodes on the 18th, I think that's probably the smart thing for this, because I don't think week to week that would work, but it's nice to have it on there. Moving on from there's also some news this week that down in Latin America, Disney are rebranding their Fox television channels to Star. So it's going to be like the Fox channel will become Star channel, Fox Life will become Star, and then they've got a load of other ones. And this is kind of going to be taking place in February. And they're also going to be getting the new Star streaming service or whichever kind of connection in with Disney Plus, all of which is expected to be announced on the Investors Day on the 10th of December. But very interesting that Disney are now going through and basically removing that Fox branding from all of their television networks. I mean, we've got Fox channel over here that is owned by Disney, and I would not be at all surprised if this happens as well over here, and it's just more synergy.
Yeah, synergy. You're stealing my word from the previous podcast. This is something they're going to want to keep the branding in line, and Star is already established in India. Several million subscribers before we even got to it.
In kind of pretty much Asia, because when I was out in Hong Kong last year, we had the Star network, and I think even in Shanghai, I think we had. So it's very much there. So I can see why they're doing it. They've got, I think it's a little bit more I think they've essentially just got to get away from the Fox branding. I think they've got a few years as part of the contract to kind of get away from that.
And not even just the Fox branding. I would not be surprised if, say, Hulu made the jump at some point to Star branding, just so they've got consistency all across the board, and it is their property. Whereas Hulu is kind of a conglomeration, multiple companies involved, investors, and so on and so forth. With the Fox acquisition, Star is theirs, and they can really claim it.
I mean, I always have this. The weird thing, really, for me, is with Hulu is the live aspect. Whether or not that carries on as its own separate thing, and I don't know what they're doing, but we're going to discuss that probably next week, and when we do our Investors Day predictions, we're going to be doing that. It'll be next week, and so yes, it's nice to see them doing that. Also, some international news as well, kind of interconnected with that one. Down in Australia, there's going to be a new system that they're currently trying to get through, where they want to start bringing in like a quota system or a license thing, where streaming networks like Disney Plus and Netflix, etc., will have to either create a certain amount of content in Australia or have to pay up the same as local networks. This is something they're trying to bring in Canada, and they also have already got that system here in Europe, where the idea really is just for the idea of American companies not just coming into countries and just essentially wiping out our local our local networks, taking away all the jobs and all the things and everything that goes alongside that, because everything's just being made in America. So they're all trying to keep hold of our infrastructures and our stories for us. It's like, for me, when I watch TV, I don't want to watch every single TV show set in New York or Los Angeles, because that's there are certain things that happen here in the UK that don't happen there, and we need to have that. I mean, I know we're going to see a lot more of this going forward, and Disney are sort of set in Netflix and saying, oh, you don't need to do this. Like, yeah, you don't want a quota because you don't want to have to commit to it. The good thing is, from Disney's point of view, is down in Sydney, they do actually have a massive studio complex where they have a number of stages. They are currently filming for Love and Thunder down there. They've recently just finished the Shang-Chi movie, and there's loads of movies and shows being made for like Channel 7 and Channel 9 down in Australia. And I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more of going forward, where we just need this, we need that local protection.
Yeah, and it's actually a good thing for Disney too. They might not like it up front because it does require an investment in both money and time, but honestly, the amount of diverse content that you get by getting stuff from other countries is only a good thing for the platform. Not just Disney Plus, but Netflix and all of them. It's not just you guys in the UK going, please stop making shows in New York, show other things as well. Even in the States, are like, people live outside New York, let's see some other things. And then also by getting a show set in Australia or the UK or the Netherlands or something like that, you get a very different perspective, and the things that they consider important aren't necessarily things we consider important, and you get that kind of exchange of ideas, exchange of culture, almost through osmosis.
Well, also you get different creative processes. You're going to get different directors. You're going to get different writers, different the production team, the makeup artists. You're also going to have a different set of actors and stuff all involved, and it's all just going to create something more interesting and more fun. And it protects the industries over here. You get and I think that's the whole thing. I mean, Disney in some way they make movies and stuff in different locations already to kind of fulfill that, but it's going to give Disney Plus much more content, and I'm hoping that they're going to start making this stuff more of it easily available. Last week there was an Aboriginal documentary series that was put onto Disney Plus in Australia. So make it available everywhere. Make it so everyone can see this stuff. They've added a new series in Italy, a new drama series. Down in Latin America, they've got 70 different Disney Plus productions underway, and there's a couple of documentaries there. Over in the Netherlands, they're filming a thing about a football club. I want to see this available for everyone, don't keep it for just one country.
Yeah, and that's absolutely understanding that most people aren't going to want to watch a documentary about Aboriginals in Australia. That's understood, but having it available hurts nobody at all. And you never know, you get some random person in the States or in the UK who gets to see it, and they learn something about a culture that they know nothing about. My entire basis of knowledge for the Aboriginals in Australia, it comes from the movie the gods must be crazy. I mean, that's literally my entire base of knowledge. And that's probably
Yeah.
not very accurate. It probably wasn't accurate 30 years ago when the movie was made. I did want to make another separate point as well, though. You mentioned Thor, God, Love and Thunder. Taika is a perfect example of what we get from getting this kind of cultural exchange. There is a lot.
He's from New Zealand.
Right, I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
There is a lot of New Zealand humor in Thor Ragnarok, and presumably also in the next one. And if they had brought in just another American director, we would not have gotten any of that. We wouldn't have gotten Korg. We would have a very different movie. Not necessarily a bad movie, not necessarily a worse or better movie, but a different movie. And having his influence on that made a tremendous amount of difference to it.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I spent about 6 months out in Australia and about 6 weeks or so out in New Zealand. So I am aware of, you know, what's out there and spending time there and watching their television and seeing all these movies and stuff. And it's that thing of, you know, they don't want, and it's the same thing over here in the UK. You want stories that are about stuff happening here. You know, you don't want everything just happening in Los Angeles, because essentially then everything's going to get very bland. And we need to protect, you know, it's not necessarily just about protecting jobs and all that, but we can't just have stories just coming through one outlet through Los Angeles, through the Disney Channel. You know, we need more variety, more stuff being made. You know, whether or not they're filming stuff and they use the same people, but ultimately they're not going to ship the entire team over from Los Angeles to you know, America, or you know, up to Canada. They want to sort out the same kind of thing. And I think we're just going to see more of this as Disney Plus rolls out, and the networks are going to have to adapt to it. You know, it's ultimately, you know, there's funding issues in local countries because people are watching traditional television less, so there's less money from advertising. But as more and more people are watching Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus, etc., it just makes sense. I'm just really hoping in some ways that Disney kind of get a hold of this and go, right, local content, we can, you know, we should try and, you know, try and use this stuff for everyone. I mean, not everyone's going to be a bit, you know, you don't have to make a big song and dance over it. But I mean, there's one down in Latin America, this documentary, it looks absolutely stunning, but they've done different audio tracks and different people doing narration depending on the country. You know, they've done one for like Mexico, one for Argentina, and one for Brazil. And it's like, well, if you've done that, surely then we can make an American voiceover and give it to the rest of us. You know, that kind of thing of like, if you've already done that, and then obviously is where you got the idea of doing dub, but then you're putting things like Bayer and, you know, they're putting all these Latin American shows on. It's like, put them out there, just put them out there, make it, you know, you've got the control. There's no reason why not.
Yeah, and if you're making subtitles for like 80 different countries already on your English spoken programs, throw it into the Spanish or the I don't know, the Dutch channels as well. We're used to it.
The only thing I would say is that if they do that, they have be more upfront when you do the description on. And there is that thing on Netflix when you start up a series and then suddenly you realize it's dubbed, and they go, oh no, I've got it, or it's subtitled, and like, if it's subtitled, I've got to really, that means I've got to concentrate, and it has to be really good.
It's really fun because you get both sides. If you release it dubbed, then you will get people going, what? Why isn't it in its original language? It should be done in the original language because that's the proper way. And if you do it with subtitles, people will be like, I don't want to read this. What do you give it? I want it in my language. You are screwed either way.
yeah. It's nice having the option, but yeah. So I think we are going to see a lot more of this moving forward. I think it's going to happen regardless, because both Canada and Australia are just trying to protect their own infrastructure, and it makes a lot of sense. Moving on from there was lots of new content this week. So we had the new Taylor Swift special, Folklore, the Long Pond sessions. It was announced on Tuesday, dropped on Wednesday, just in time for Thanksgiving. It's about just under 2 hour kind of, it's a special. It's like, you know, they're basically sat in a log cabin, and it's all very cozy. You know, they got rugs on the floor, just her and her two producers singing these songs and performing them for the kind of first time together, because when they made the album Folklore during the lockdown, they were all apart. So it was like them coming together, doing it all socially distanced. I mean, I think they had like a track going around filming them, and they had like 6 stationary cameras. So it was all done very remotely, and they only did this in September. I mean, that's a pretty good turnaround, 2 months to turn this one around. You get to hear all 17 of the tracks from the album. You also get a little bit of descriptions where they talk about how they made or how they came up with those songs. Sat around a campfire. It's very, very laid back, very chilled, and just kind of refreshing. I really like the idea of them just doing stuff like this. You know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be always, I mean, luckily for me, I mean, I like Taylor Swift songs anyway, so this was a nice, easygoing thing. But you know, any person, you know, they can do it on it. You know, any singer, or you know, Katy Perry, Gaga, anyone like that. Just, you know, just give us something different. And I really, really like this one.
Yeah, and you don't even necessarily have to do like a specific singer. We had those sing-alongs way back at the beginning of quarantine where they just had celebrities at home singing various Disney songs. You can do something like that. There's all sorts of options, and I think that Taylor Swift is a very good one to start with. I know she's got a ton of fans all over the world, so people are going to be tuning in to check this out. But honestly, you can do this with anybody, and they should. Disney is very much intertwined with music, both through television, you know, the Mouseketeers clubs and all those kids who went on to be music people, but also through the animated films, you know, Lion King, Frozen, Aladdin, and so on. They have many, many catalogs to draw on, and it's content that people would watch no matter how much it costs them to create. I mean,
Yeah.
This does not sound like it was a particularly expensive production. It was just kind of chill in a log cabin. Not to say it was cheap, but in terms of
I spent
relative
the money
costs.
went to Taylor and a music thing, but I'm also just really impressed with the idea that they got this knocked out for Disney Plus. I mean, whether or not got like, you know, they came up with the idea and floated it around to different companies, or Disney came up with the idea, but it's like this is the kind of thing of with the pandemic still going on, of just being able to create content, a low end one with hardly anybody involved, and do it. I mean, I just think that's fantastic. You know, original was filmed in September and out in November, and they turned it around, and it's going to have lots of views, big impact. I mean, I would love the idea of them like filming concerts and doing stuff, but they can't go on concerts. They can't do anything right now. So I just think this was such a great idea.
They can't do proper concerts, obviously, but they do have the facilities to do some smaller scale audience-free concerts with people at the parks. They could use the Hyperion over in Disneyland. They've probably got pre-recorded shows from some of the Broadway stuff that they could do, like they did for Hamilton. There are a lot of options here. In the meantime, if you like Taylor Swift, you've probably already watched it, but if you haven't, or maybe you want to watch it again, show your support and check it out.
Hopefully it will last a lot longer than the ABC series. So I think that was a separate thing, because that was kind of like purchased in like a last minute thing right at the beginning of the lockdown. So moving on from there, we had a brand new Disney Plus original drop this week. We had Black Beauty. And what did you think of the movie?
I liked it better than I thought I would. I thought I was going to go into it and just kind of fall asleep. But it is pretty well put together. It moves a little quickly in terms of storytelling, particularly towards the end, but it doesn't need to dwell too much on a lot of it. I was a little frustrated because it felt like I was watching War Horse again. Recognizing, of course, that War Horse was written more than 100 years after Black Beauty was, so I know which one came first. But I saw War Horse before I'd seen or read anything about Black Beauty, so that's my starting point. And I was like, okay, I've seen this movie, but it's still really well done. Good actors, good actress. Nothing against Kate Winslet. Very good actress. Does a great narration, but I also don't think the narration was particularly necessary.
Or it could have just been done with a bit of toning down. It could have just done with a bit less.
A lot less, actually. I mean, yeah, there were some parts towards the end of it where they rapid fire, like the horse was owned by this person, and they were a good person, but they had to give up the horse. So now the horse is owned by this person, and this person was not evil, but negligent. And then they were owned by this person, and they just rapid fire through and kind of like, all right, we need a narration for that, but did I really need the narration to explain that the horse was unhappy that it was separated from the rest of its herd? No, I kind of figured that out on my own.
Yeah, I mean, in the original novel, it went through like dozens of owners, so it was much quicker. So obviously in this one, they kind of stuck with Joe for much longer, kind of establishing it. Or I could have done with them spending a lot less time with the posh friends, and I felt that dragged a little bit. It's like we got the gist of the fact that the girl was nasty. You know, it felt like we could have probably cut that down to, I mean, obviously they didn't get, I think the main thing was like introducing the boy, but even he was a bit like, you know, he turned up at the end and went like, okay, it wouldn't have made any difference. It could have been any bloke at that point, just turn up. But yeah, that was the only real thing really of where it felt like it dragged, was that bit where you know, she was at that posh school.
Yeah, I think it was important for character development for Joe. It was also important for the horse to kind of recognize how her life was going to be moving forward. The part that was weird to me were those two other girls right at the beginning, in the first section, where I'm just like, they're getting set up as the mean girls. They're, you know, they're nasty for no particular reason, but they're whatever. And then
went nowhere.
They just disappear. They have a couple snarky comments. They show up in the posh stable and have a couple more snarky comments, and then they're gone. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
They have zero personality other than being mean.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really good movie. It's the kind of stuff that we don't, that, you know, generally probably you wouldn't go cinema to see. Perfect for streaming, perfect for where it landed. And the big thing I think for this as well, it not being made by Disney meant that it was a little, and the same thing happened with Clouds. It wasn't quite as super fluffy, and I enjoyed the fact that it wasn't kind of Disney-fied a little bit. It was, I think, like, had Disney made it, it would have been a little bit more fluffy.
They probably would have gone for a little bit more sap on the ending.
Yeah,
I mean, it was already a little bit sappy, but that's, you kind of expect that from the beginning.
I mean, it was pretty sad. I mean, it was, in some ways, you know, like,
it was sad, but it was more of a catharsis sad.
Yeah.
Like, until they're like, oh yeah, and then I died many years later. It's like, okay, that probably wasn't necessary for you to include that bit.
I was like, okay, so you just, and now I'm, you know, I'm with my mum. I'm like, okay, that was kind of pretty dark for Disney. I mean, I know, you know, was just, yeah.
But here's the thing: is we have no sense of time in that, other than the horse dropping in. Oh yeah, 2 years pass from when Joe was no longer my owner. We have no sense of how long any of these bits and pieces last. How long was she in the care of the farmer?
At one point, they say it's 7 years later.
Right, but then,
but she looks identical. Obviously, she hasn't like aged in the slightest. It's like, well, either she was really, because she didn't look like a 14-year-old, whatever it was to begin with.
They were just playing the long game.
The only thing is, right, is there was this one scene where this lad is on his mobile phone, right, and they're kind of making fun of it. And I was on the lines of, if you took that scene out, that movie could have been made. That could have been could have been set in the 60s. It could have been set in this. It's like, you've like modernized it. Well, how? Because he's got a mobile phone. It's literally the only way they it felt like they got, you know. I mean, I know they had the helicopters and all the rest at the beginning, but that, you know, that could have been set in the 80s. I don't know. It was literally that one scene with the mobile phone, because even the stuff at the posh school, everything was very, like, you know, it's like when she got to you're going to school. Well, does she need the Wi-Fi password? You know, there was like no kind of mention. I know it's like not necessarily important, but it just seemed that kid on the phone was like, okay, now it's modern. Is that all it is?
The funny thing about the phone is it didn't even feel like it was a plot point. I know that it's supposed to be he was distracted and that's why the barn burned down, but it felt more like they included the cell phone so they could have Jorah Mormont quip in with something like, get off your phone, you little kid. Or it was like, was that really necessary? Whatever. But yeah, obviously the real point was that he was distracted, not properly watching, and almost killed the horses by accident, which actually ended up being a bit of a theme of the movie of you don't have just cruel people, though they certainly had plenty of those. You also have people who are just like, you should have nothing to do with horses ever because you're going to kill them by accident.
I think the one that did get me was the police officer with, well, you know, that didn't put and, you know, and I mean, even the narration was like, oh, he didn't know any better. It was like, and it's like, it's like, you know, he's a police officer. He dealt with the situation. He just put the horse in and walked away, you know, because he wouldn't. Why would you? Why would you think that a horse needed to be, you know? I don't know. It obviously had a big impact, but it was that situation of, in some way, of like, well, you know, she sort of said, well, you know, he didn't know any better. But it's like, yeah, well, I see where they went with it, but it was actually, I wouldn't necessarily, it wasn't neglect on his side. It was complete. He just was grabbing somebody off the street and saying, here's my dog, you know.
I would still count it as neglect, but to be fair, it was not intentional neglect. He didn't know that he needed to do this thing. But this is also leads into back into that idea of they kind of rapid fired things and didn't really let the consequences sit in, because they're like, okay, and because of this, she got horse pneumonia. I forget what the actual term for it was.
Tuberculosis or something like that.
It wasn't tuberculosis, but in any event, she got sick from it. And then not more than a minute later, she was like, oh yeah, she was kind of in and out for a couple of weeks, and then she was fine. But her owner was going to retire, so he sold her off and just like, okay, so there were basically no consequences to her getting sick.
And there was a kind of weird thing as well, like, so what? Not one thing. It's like this whole thing of like the horses being. I'd be honest, I'd never really imagined like anyone really selling a horse. It's like I was a bit like, how many times we got sewed on. I'm like, well, what? Okay, yeah. Nevertheless, but obviously back in the 1800s and stuff, it was essentially a very expensive products to have. But I don't know, I sort of watched this movie, I got to the end and I was like, I enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to. It was a nice, solid, family friendly movie. I'd recommend it. And if you've got younger kids, just be aware that there are some scenes that are they don't show a lot, but there is a little bit of, I don't know, peril involved in it. But I was just very impressed. I really wish Disney had kind of done a lot more promotion when they did something like what she was sat in a field talking to interviewers, and I was like okay, there's been no publicity about this at all, and I really feel like they needed that for this movie. And I think that's the problem going forward the next few weeks, where we've got all these movies dropping, and it's like they're really pushing Soul, but Safety, Godmothered, and Black Beauty have kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and Black Beauty is absolutely one that they could have put at least a little bit of force behind. I mean, it wouldn't be the the tentpole release. It wouldn't be the one where like you need to get a Disney Plus subscription so you can watch Black Beauty. But it's the one where it's like, hey, you have a Disney Plus subscription, or you're visiting with family right now and they have a Disney Plus. Black Beauty, it's a good family movie, especially if you've got to entertain younger kids.
I wish they put it out on Thanksgiving, or actually swap maybe Black Beauty with Godmothered, and had something drop on that Thursday. And I had that as a bigger, because Godmother's coming up next week, and then we've got Safety. We're having these movies just dropping, and it's like there needs to be maybe a little bit more.
I am dreading Godmothered right now.
Well, we'll be talking about that one next week, but
we will.
It's definitely that kind of thing of, I think there needs to be a lot more promotion of it. So let's now move on to the big one of the week. So The Mandalorian. What an episode. Now I'm going to be honest, we can't do this without not doing spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, come back afterwards. Unfortunately, there's just too much in here for us not to go into it. But what did you think of that episode?
I loved it. And for all the obvious reasons, you've got Ahsoka Tano right there from the beginning. She looks fantastic, and she got some good fight scenes in there right at the beginning and then right at the end. You've got Michael Biehn in there in a small cameo role. I have a fondness for Michael Bihn's acting, even if it is really hammy. You've got that important name drop, which we'll come back to in a second. You've got all sorts of little references, and then of course, just more fun action Mandalorian all around. It's just been such a great season so far, and this has been a great episode in it.
This definitely felt like this wasn't, there was a major information dropped in this episode. That alone in any of the episodes would have made it big. The idea that Ahsoka was able to basically communicate with Grogu. Was it Grogu? I think that was
Grogu. Yes.
Yeah.
Or Grogu. Sorry.
That's his new name. It's no longer Baby Yoda. It's now Grogu.
No. I do not care what his official name is. He is Baby Yoda.
Yeah. I think it's going to take a while. I'm glad in some way they kind of got that out of the way. They
needed to.
I'm not being funny, but the child is such an awful marketing bit of a, like, this is the child. It made I'm glad they got it out of the way. Obviously now it means now they can make all more new toys and put his name on it. But what I really liked was that whole aspect of that they've set up that he was a Padawan trained at the Jedi Council, they smuggled him out during the events of the Revenge of the Sith when Anakin was attacking everybody, and went into hiding, and it was trained by Jedis. And I was like, I really like that they've positioned him. They've put him where he's not just a kid that's just got the Force sensitive. No, he was a Padawan, and I appreciate it. And I also like the fact that as well them playing up on the idea that he's got attached to Mando, and that Ahsoka didn't want to train him because of what happened with Vader. I just thought that was so well done. I mean, in some one hand, you kind of go, "Or was this the point where they pass off Yoda, Baby Yoda, to Ahsoka?" And they didn't. They didn't go down that line. And the fact that they even name drop Yoda, they didn't pull away from this.
Nope, they owned it, and it made sense that Ahsoka would not want to train Baby Yoda. She was never actually a real Jedi. She was a Padawan, so she never had to train anyone. She kind of assisted a little with Ezra, but that was still mostly Kanan. And in her shoes, I would absolutely be like, nope, this guy has a lot of power, and if I do this wrong, there's a lot of really bad things that could happen. Nope, you got to find someone else to do this.
I mean, I just love that whole aspect of what they did with that one. I just really like how they've centered Baby Yoda of what happened, where he was, and I think as well establishing for people that he's been around a while, and he was there right through the whole of, the original trilogy, and there was the after effects of Return of the Jedi, the power vacuum. I just loved all that. There was a few other things that I really enjoyed. Was the planet that they were on looked very different. They're very green, very horrible, very much kind of that the village had the kind of Chinese, Japanese vibe, and the whole scene had a kind of samurai effect, where they're jumping from rooftop to rooftop, kind of doing stuff, and the villagers are all helping out. And it reminded me of some video games I played, like Tenchi on the PlayStation and other movies and stuff. And I just was really impressed with that whole thing.
Yeah, and I got a lot of Chinese vibes out of it as well, particularly when we saw that the woman was using a spear, which I typically associate more with like the martial arts films out of China, something like Hero with Donnie Yen and Jet. Yeah, that fight scene, Jet Li, Donnie Yen with the sword and the spear is one of the best martial arts fight scenes, at least the last 20 years or so. Either way, loved all of that. They had a lot of fun with that. And I wanted to jump back for 1 second because this occurred to me while you were talking about it. Like, they still do need to give us a reason why nobody has said, hey, there's this kid named Luke Skywalker. He might be a Jedi that you want to talk to. Ahsoka probably would have. It makes sense that most people wouldn't know who he was. Ahsoka, even though we've never seen her officially learn about him because we don't know her stuff after Rebels, it would seem likely that she would know who he was.
I don't know, but also the fact of him sort of saying, her calling out that other Jedis will. I mean, they basically set him up on this quest now where he's going to head off to this temple to become a Jedi, and I mean, we all just know that someone's coming in the middle of all that and interfering. But it sets up, are they going to bring in? I mean, a lot of people that are jumping straight to like Luke Skywalker. I'm thinking more like Ezra or Kanan or.
Well, Kanan's dead, but
yeah. Well, Ezra definitely kind of stands out as the main one.
Well, and the main reason Ezra stands out, of course, is because they name dropped Grand Admiral Thrawn right in the middle of the episode, which, of course, if you've seen Rebels, you know that he and Thrawn are very closely linked at the moment or at this part of the timeline. So there is that potential, but I was reading that more as them setting up a spinoff for Ahsoka to go hunting for Thrawn and Ezra. I think most people were going with that angle as well. So there's certainly that.
I mean, I did do an audible gasp because I mean, I've read the novels. I'm a big fan of the character, and that was like, oh, well, okay, this is great. This is what we want. There's been rumors of them doing a spin-off show. This sets us all up perfectly. This just sets this whole thing going. This was the closest thing to a live-action version of Rebels we've seen. There's little loft cats running around. We've got all the characters in there.
So cute.
It was so good. The only thing I did bring up was the idea that maybe if you've not seen the Clone Wars or Rebels, a lot of this stuff will go over your head because like my dad will be watching this episode today or over the weekend, and he will not know the importance of Ahsoka or Thrawn, but then it would have been the same thing when the Darksaber or Bo-Katan turned up.
Right.
They do, yeah.
Well, I think Bo-Katan and the Darksaber would be different situations, because I watched the Darksaber episode with the ending of season 1 with somebody who had no Star Wars knowledge outside the movies, and he was definitely like, wait, what was that? Was that significant? That's like a black lightsaber. I'm like, oh, I will tell you the significance of that Darksaber. Bo-Katan and also Ahsoka to a degree, you can kind of just go with, we have had new characters every single episode. There are, we had the person in the Boba Fett outfit in the first episode. We've had various people show up here and there. So people watching The Mandalorian are used to characters just kind of dropping in. And is there importance to this character outside of this moment? I don't know. Maybe not. The one exception I would make to that, though, is Grand Admiral Thrawn, because the way they mentioned him, it was very clear that you are supposed to go, oh man. Because there's a lot of gravitas in the way that she dropped the name. There was a lot of importance implied in it. It gets its own like beat. There is nothing else going on in that moment. So I think if you don't know who Thrawn is, you're kind of going, wait, is that important? Who's this guy? Because you do get the sense from that scene that you are supposed to go, I know who this is, and I am psyched out to see this. So Ahsoka, yeah, you can just go, okay, this is the hero of the week who showed up, and either she has a history or she doesn't. Bo-Katan, same thing. But that moment with Thrawn, you're like, ooh.
We just want this one episode where they bring Ahsoka, the Mandalorians all in, and they bring everybody together for to go rescue Baby Yoda. They're either going to go that way or that'll be like season 3.
That's kind of what I'm expecting, is that the ending of season 2 will in some way involve them losing Baby Yoda. Either Moff Gideon captures him or he gets abducted by someone, and then season 3 will be tracking him down. I did want to ask you this, though. In terms of references, I'm curious if you got the Tython and the HK-87 references, what those are references to.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so this leads, that was my point too, where it's another thing where they drop in these references, and a lot of the times if you don't know it's a reference, then whatever, it's just a thing. So Tython plays a major part in the Star Wars The Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic video games from back in the day, which most people probably haven't played recently.
I haven't played them either.
They probably have not aged well, but Tython plays a major part of that. It's where the original Jedi Council, or not the original, but it's where the Jedi Council used to be before they moved to Coruscant. And HK-87 is a reference to a very popular character called HK-47. He's the character who's always like talking about meat bags and things like that. So having both of those things in there were huge nods to the Star Wars, the Knights of the Old Republic. But yeah, if you didn't know those were references to something, you're just like, oh, okay, go to this planet. And there's assassin droids. Cool.
Yeah. I just don't know. I was just really impressed. This whole season has just continued to build on it week after week after week. It doesn't feel like that. We need a cheap episode here. We need to cut back on it. It's like, no, we're not cutting back on budgets. You've got a budget for every episode's. You'd almost say every episode's got the same budget.
I'm kind of curious to see how the final 2 episodes, or at least the final episode, if we're going to see a budget spike in those. But honestly, I was kind of going back, like episode 1, they just blew the entire budget on this crate dragon. It turns out, no, actually they didn't.
No. So that's the thing you normally see in things where they, you get a few episodes of thing where they got to kind of trim the fat a little bit, but no, they've not done that one there. Again, I was just very, very, very impressed. I got to the end of the episode and went, that's a super episode. We've only got 3 more episodes left of this season. Just a very impressive episode. Right. On that note, guys, thank you very much for joining us again.
Again for us.
Again for us, yeah. That's the first time I've done that one. Okay, that's the first time I've done that.
To be honest, we have been doing podcasts here and on Diz Kingdom together for more than 4 years now, and you were doing it before I joined you. Yeah. So The fact that this is the first time that's happened is actually really impressive.
Yes. So on that note, thank you very much to all of our supporters on YouTube and also on Patreon. You can become a member from as little as $2 a month. You can also subscribe on YouTube audio platforms. You can also go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. And on that, guys, thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon. Later.
May the Grogu be with you.
Grogu.
Grogu. Goku.